When the Dharma is twisted, a wake-up call from a real-life story. Recently, the discovery that a prominent abbot of a major temple in Vietnam had been using a fake degree shocked the public, not only in society, but also within the monastic community. This is not an isolated incident. It is a wake-up call, reminding us of the moral decay and misguided path of some modern-day monks. As transmitters of the Dharma, these individuals should be shining examples of wisdom and ethics. However, instead of practicing the teachings with compassion and sincerity, they turn their teachings into a performance, focused on showcasing themselves. Their teachings are no longer a light guiding the way, but rather tools to instill fear, or worse, to serve their own ego and personal fame. When the Dharma becomes a threat, the teachings, which should help sentient beings understand the law of karma, impermanence, and the liberation from suffering, are now distorted to create confusion. People hear statements like, if you sing karaoke, in your next life, you'll be a mute ghost. If you love to travel, in your next life, you'll be paralyzed. Such words do not come from compassion or wisdom, but from a desire to control followers through fear, not enlightenment. This is not the Dharma that the Buddha taught. It is a distorted version that strips away the freedom and enlightenment the teachings were meant to offer. Followers in the dark, masters in the grip of fame. Another sad aspect is the blind faith of followers who follow such masters. They do not learn how to awaken, but instead become instruments of protecting their teacher at all costs. When the teacher is praised, they lavish praises without restraint. When the teacher is criticized, they are quick to attack, regardless of right or wrong. This superstition and blind following result from a lack of proper practice. The Buddha always encouraged sentient beings to use wisdom to examine even his own teachings. Yet in this case, rather than encouraging followers to reflect, these teachers intentionally foster dependency, turning their followers into emotional followers rather than enlightened ones. A wake-up call. Where are we heading? This incident is not just a lesson for one individual, but a reminder for the entire Buddhist community. Buddhism is not a place to seek fame or power. It is a path to liberation. If practitioners forget this goal, they not only lose their way, but also drag countless sentient beings into the whirlpool of ignorance. As a practitioner, ask yourself, does my teaching awaken others, or is it just a tool for show? Do my actions stem from compassion, or are they merely to reinforce my position? Are my disciples learning how to awaken, or are they simply being led by fear? Buddhism needs no glitzy exterior. The value of Buddhism lies in its content, not its form. A true teacher does not need a degree to prove their wisdom, does not need accolades to affirm their value, and certainly does not need to use threats to keep their followers. The Buddha's teachings are profound and powerful enough to stand firm through all eras, without needing anyone's embellishments. Return to the core of the Dharma. Teach and learn with sincerity so that each teaching is not just sound passing through the ears, but a light illuminating the soul. Do not let mistakes and misdirection turn Buddhism into a laughingstock, but let it remain the guiding light that leads sentient beings through the darkness of ignorance. 1. Fame and fortune, the sweet trap that leads the practitioner astray. In the luminous light of the Dharma, fame and fortune are but fleeting flames. Beautiful, yet capable of burning an entire life of practice if one is not mindful. What could be more regrettable than a person who has vowed to abandon the worldly life, becoming entangled in the whirlpool of vanity and power? Fame and fortune are like the reflection of the moon on water, seemingly close, yet the more we reach for them, the farther we drift from the core of liberation that the practitioner seeks. When fame and fortune arrive, they stir the heart. The mind, which is like still water, is disturbed when ambition and status slip in, creating waves that drag along with them illusions and desires. At that point, the practitioner is no longer the one who carries the light of compassion, but has become someone preoccupied with the worldly gaze. Is it because of the solemn robe or the high position that we are respected? Or is it because of our pure virtue, our boundless compassion, that the world reveres us? If our thoughts are not clear, fame and fortune will act like a trap, pulling us away from the right path. How can we tell when we have lost our way? It is when the practitioner begins to crave praise more than the serenity of meditation. It is when one becomes engrossed in organizing grand events to display achievements, forgetting that a single sincere thought in the heart of a true devotee can move the entire spiritual realm. It is when each teaching is no longer for the salvation of sentient beings, but rather to affirm one's own status. These seemingly small things are the signs of a mind still burdened by worldly attachments. Fame and fortune are not sweet fruits. They are poisons disguised in alluring shells. They call to the practitioner to reach for them, but in return they cause irreparable losses. The purity of the heart, the peace found in each step of mindful walking. Once trapped, it is more difficult to retreat than to climb to the top of a high mountain. Are we practicing for fame and fortune, or for liberation? This is the question every practitioner must ask themselves in each moment. The praise or criticism of the world, the gains or losses, all dissipate like morning mist when the sun of enlightenment rises. But if the practitioner does not maintain their integrity, we will be the ones who sow the seeds of error in the hearts of those seeking the light. Be wary of fame and fortune, for they are embers that smolder quietly, easily consuming an entire lifetime of practice. Remember that the Dharma does not need famous individuals. It needs those who silently practice, illuminating the path for others with their own compassion and wisdom. Do not let fame and fortune take control. Let them be a lesson that teaches us to cultivate the mind, uphold the precepts, and continue walking the path to awakening. 2. Misunderstanding the Dharma, the cracked mirror reflecting distorted light. The Dharma is like a clear stream flowing from the fountain of wisdom of the Buddha. But when that stream is contained in a cracked vessel of misunderstanding, it becomes a murky drop that clouds the minds of sentient beings. Misunderstanding or misusing the Dharma is not just a personal deviation, but a powerful wind that shifts the sails of others away from the shore of enlightenment. Misunderstanding leads to confusion. When the teachings are misinterpreted, they become tools serving personal ambitions instead of being a torch to guide the way. The one who teaches with an impure mind turns the noble teachings into tricks to impress, manipulate, or protect personal interests. They use the name of the Dharma to control followers, offering distorted arguments to justify unjust actions or sowing seeds of fear. Abusing the Dharma brings fear to the heart. There are those who will not hesitate to use the Buddha's words to intimidate and control others. They paint a terrifying picture of hell if their instructions are not followed, or embellish the Pure Land as a reward only they hold the key to. These teachings, cloaked in the guise of right Dharma, are, in truth, tools to reinforce power and profit. When do we fall into the labyrinth of misinterpreted teachings? It is when we hear teachings that do not lead to liberation, but instead bind us with doubts and fears. It is when we see the teacher not leading us to self-reliance, but forcing us into complete dependency on them. It is when the Buddha's words are taken out of context and manipulated to serve private agendas. Misunderstanding the Dharma is a grave fault, not only for oneself, but for all sentient beings. It is a smoldering fire that scorches the forest of enlightenment in the minds of those who thirst for the light of truth. Each wrong teaching, each misuse of the Dharma is like a poisonous seed that, once sown, will sprout into a tree of ignorance and suffering. So, how can we avoid falling into this mistake? A practitioner must first ask themselves, do I speak these words to save others from suffering or to seek praise and admiration? If the answer does not come from compassion and humility, then we are planting the seeds of error. Revisit the scriptures, learn from true practitioners, and continually examine your own mind. The Dharma does not need distorted mirrors to reflect the light, but needs pure lamps that illuminate the true path to liberation. Remember, each teaching is a responsibility, and each action based on the Dharma is an opportunity to sow seeds of good karma. Do not let the cracked mirror of the mind distort the eternal light of the Dharma. Be mindful, for one wrong step can lead an entire group into the darkness of ignorance with no way out. 3. Straying from liberation, lost in the maze of hidden desires. On the path of practice, liberation is the noble destination, the light at the end of the journey that the practitioner devotes their life to seeking. Yet, alas, how many have strayed into the maze of fame, wealth, attachments, and fleeting goals, forgetting the true aim of liberation, like those dreaming who fail to realize they are sleeping amidst the ocean of worldly suffering? Liberation is the beacon in the ocean of ignorance. The Blessed One clearly taught that the path to liberation from samsara is one of renunciation, letting go, and attaining perfect wisdom. However, instead of moving toward that light, some wander aimlessly in the seductive detours of organizing events, expanding temples, and seeking the admiration of followers. These activities, seemingly for the Dharma, are in fact invisible webs, entangling the mind and pulling one away from the right path. Straying from the goal of liberation does not happen in a single moment. It happens quietly, like a smoldering fire. At first, the practitioner may think they are serving sentient beings by building infrastructure, organizing grand events, or becoming an influential teacher. But in this hustle, time for meditation, learning the teachings, and self-reflection gradually slips away. The ego begins to grow, and the soul, once fertile ground for planting virtuous seeds, becomes a barren desert due to a lack of the nourishing waters of compassion and wisdom. What are the signs of someone who has lost their way? When we measure success by external achievements, forgetting that true inner peace is the real goal. When we allow our minds to be disturbed by praise and criticism, no longer standing firm amidst the fluctuating tides of life. When we feel too busy to dedicate time to ourselves or to reflect on our original intentions. To stray from the goal of liberation is to lose oneself. It is like a boatman caught in a strong current. The more we cling to what is not essential, the further we are pulled away from the shore of liberation. The practitioner must ask themselves, why am I doing this? Does it bring me and others closer to enlightenment, or does it merely tire me with the meaningless cycles of worldly life? The greatest danger is the loss of mindfulness. If we do not turn back in time, these small steps off course will lead to an endless, aimless journey. At that point, the practitioner will not only fail in their own quest, but also mislead others into a dead end. One lost soul can lead an entire group astray. Remember, liberation is not far away, but found in mindfulness in each moment. Every step in meditation, every breath in mindfulness is a brick laid on the path. Do not let your mind lose sight of the light of your goal. For if you do, you not only waste your life of practice, but also lose the opportunity to attain the eternal truth. Return as soon as you can. Let go of what does not belong on the path of awakening. Take time for stillness, to learn and practice the teachings. For if the goal of liberation is forgotten, then a lifetime of practice becomes a dull play, and the actor, in the end, will gain nothing but endless emptiness. 4. The absence of compassion. A cold heart leading to a spiritual dead end. In the realm of the Dharma, compassion is the breath, the heartbeat of the Buddha's teachings. Without compassion and sincere listening, a practitioner is no different from a withered tree, standing still amidst the storm of ignorance, incapable of sheltering or saving anyone. But compassion is not merely a spoken word or an outward action. It is the quiet stream flowing from the vast heart, embracing all the suffering of sentient beings. If that stream dries up, the practitioner has burned the bridge connecting them to the realm of enlightenment. Compassion is not a choice. It is the very essence of the Buddhist path. A person lacking compassion has distanced themselves from the core of Buddhist teachings. But what is even more terrifying is when the absence of compassion is hidden beneath a facade of arrogance. Instead of listening to understand, they listen to judge. Instead of comforting to soothe, they use harsh words that make others feel small and weak. These actions, whether unintentional or deliberate, are like sharp knives, deeply cutting into the trust and hope of those seeking the light. How do we know when we lack compassion? When we no longer have the patience to listen to someone who is suffering. When our words, instead of soothing, make the listener feel hurt. When we belittle the pain of others, thinking it to be trivial and unworthy of concern. Lacking compassion is to build a wall of separation. Those who come to the Buddha's teachings often carry pain and the hope of healing. But if they only receive coldness and judgment, they will leave with heavier hearts. A practitioner lacking compassion not only harms sentient beings, but also closes the door to their own liberation. Listening is the path to compassion. It is not by accident that the Buddha emphasized the role of listening in his teachings. Listening is not for replying, but for feeling. Listening is not for judging, but for empathizing. It is how the practitioner opens their heart to truly understand the suffering of sentient beings and find ways to alleviate it. But remember, listening also requires a selfless heart. If the practitioner listens with the expectation of receiving respect, gratitude, or to reinforce their own authority, that listening is but an empty shell. Compassion is not a gift given from above. It is immersing oneself in the shared suffering of life. If we lack the humility to recognize this, we have lost the light of wisdom in our hands. Ask yourself, is my heart shrinking or is it expanding? If we fail to listen and do not practice compassion, each passing day pulls us further away from the path of awakening. Like a rudderless boat, our soul will drift aimlessly in the sea of ignorance, without a shore in sight. Compassion is the thread that binds all suffering into hope. Listen to feel, practice compassion to share. Do not let your heart turn to stone, for a dry heart cannot plant the seeds of liberation. A practitioner lacking compassion is like a lamp without light, like barren land without life. Do not let yourself become an empty image, but become the refreshing river, nourishing the dry lives in suffering. 5. Self-discipline, the key to liberation or a door to decay. In the vast ocean of Buddha's teachings, self-discipline is the lighthouse, illuminating the path to liberation from ignorance. Without discipline, a practitioner is no different from a rudderless boat, carried away by the storms, forever lost in the sea of suffering. It is not only negligence and self-indulgence, but also a betrayal of the very liberation the practitioner has vowed to pursue. Self-discipline is not a burden. It is the wings of freedom. The Buddha taught that no one can walk the path of enlightenment for us. But to walk it, we must control each step we take. Without discipline, those steps will stray, and instead of drawing closer to enlightenment, we will sink deeper into the whirlpool of ignorance and desire. When do we lack self-discipline? When we promise to meditate every day, but easily give up because of being too busy or too tired. When we lack mindfulness to uphold precepts, allowing ourselves to break them with trivial excuses. When our minds are distracted by worldly desires, and we lack the strength to bring ourselves back to the right path. What are the consequences of loosening self-discipline? Without discipline, the practitioner is easily swept into temporary pleasures, external activities, or even invisible laziness. Each day that passes without diligence brings us further from the light of enlightenment. The mind, already difficult to train, becomes like an untamed horse, pulling us into dead ends of suffering and ignorance. Self-discipline is not coercion, but the manifestation of wisdom. A disciplined practitioner understands that precepts and daily practices are not shackles, but the path to true freedom. Those who disregard self-discipline often convince themselves that they have transcended these forms. But in reality, they are simply sliding into laziness and arrogance. Do not make yourself a prisoner of indulgence. Without discipline, the practitioner will forever be a prisoner of desires and inner weaknesses. Remember, freedom is not doing whatever we want, but mastering our own mind and actions. Ask yourself, where is my self-discipline? Do I wake up early to meditate and chant, or do I sleep in the comfort of ease? Do I strictly observe the precepts, or do I easily break them for small temptations? Do I set aside time for reflection and practice, or do I drown in endless busyness? Be awake, for the lack of self-discipline is the silent death of the spiritual life. It does not come suddenly, but slowly erodes willpower and faith. Today, we let go of a small task, tomorrow a bigger one, and by the time we realize it, we have completely strayed from our own path. Discipline is the light that illuminates the darkness of ignorance. Keep it as you would protect a flame in a storm. Every small action, every moment of diligence is a seed of enlightenment. Do not let indulgence kill the only opportunity we have in this life. Remember, self-discipline is not a limitation. It is the wings that help us soar beyond samsara, towards true freedom. 6. Stuck between the flow of time, when practitioners turn their backs on modernity. Time is like an endless river, constantly flowing, carrying with it inevitable changes. In the modern world, where technology is advancing and human thinking changes day by day, practitioners cannot hold on to outdated images or confine themselves to rigid frameworks. Failing to adapt to the modern context is not only a sign of backwardness, but also a threat that could make Buddhist teachings seem distant and lose their vitality in the hearts of sentient beings. Buddhism is not a stagnant stone. The Buddha did not teach the Dharma for it to stop in his time. On the contrary, the Dharma is like a refreshing stream, flowing across all ages, soothing the human soul in every circumstance. However, if practitioners do not learn to integrate with the present flow, that stream will dry up, and the practitioners themselves will become increasingly detached from the world. What does it mean to not adapt to the modern context? It is when practitioners reject the value of technology, refusing to use it to spread the Dharma, and instead view it as a threat rather than a useful tool. It is when they rigidly interpret the teachings, failing to clarify their meaning in the context of modern life, making the teachings feel alien and difficult to apply. It is when they lack understanding of new social issues, from work pressure and mental crises to complex relationships, and fail to offer suitable solutions. What is the greatest danger of not adapting? Practitioners gradually lose their role in guiding others. When teachings are no longer relevant, sentient beings will turn away and seek support elsewhere. A temple without followers, a teacher without students, is the manifestation of not adapting in the modern age. Worse still, they inadvertently obscure the light of the Dharma, causing people to misunderstand or lose faith in the value of the teachings. Adapting does not mean changing the essence, but renewing the approach. The Buddha skillfully adjusted his teachings to suit the capacities of different sentient beings, and this is a great lesson for modern practitioners. We should use technology as an extended arm to bring the Buddha's teachings to millions of people, overcoming all geographic barriers. We should learn to speak the language of the era, close, understandable, but without losing depth and core values. How to adapt without losing the roots. Practitioners need to be mindful in distinguishing between means and essence. Technology, new methods, or modern approaches are merely tools, not the goal. The essence of Buddhism remains wakefulness, compassion, and wisdom. But to maintain this essence, we must be flexible in how we convey it, like water that adapts its shape to fit any container. Ask yourself, are we building a bridge or erecting a wall? If we reject modernity, we are building a wall between the teachings and sentient beings. If we accept and know how to use it, we are constructing a bridge that brings others closer to the Dharma. Do not let stubbornness push us into the corners of time. We cannot stop the river of time, but we can learn how to navigate it. Let the Dharma be the guiding light, not only for the past, but also for the present and the future. Adapting does not diminish the value of practitioners. It is evidence of their wisdom and compassion in harmonizing with the flow of life. 7. Splitting the path in two, when internal conflicts shake the roots of Buddhism. Like a mighty tree that needs the harmony of every branch and leaf to grow tall, Buddhism also requires unity among its members. But when the flames of conflict ignite, even from the smallest sparks, they can burn everything: faith, respect, and even the shared goal of helping sentient beings escape from suffering. Creating conflicts within a religious community is not only a grave mistake, but also an act of self-destruction from within, shattering the very core that Buddhism has preserved for thousands of years. Internal conflict, a silent but dangerous crack. When practitioners forget the goal of liberation and allow their egos to dominate, conflicts arise. These may be rivalry for position, disagreements on practice, or even petty differences in rituals. However, no matter where it starts, internal conflict is the first crack that causes the Buddhist house to gradually collapse. When do conflicts start to surface? It is when a group of people considers themselves to have a deeper understanding of the teachings and dismisses the practices of others. It is when rivalry for fame or power turns harmonious relationships into fierce competition. It is when, instead of resolving issues together, members use words and actions to criticize and attack each other. The consequences are not confined to the community. An internal religious conflict not only weakens the community, but also causes sentient beings to lose faith. People turn to Buddhism in the hope of guidance, but if they witness conflicts and divisions, they will wonder, how can Buddhism liberate sentient beings if the practitioners themselves cannot even live in harmony? This fracture not only dims the light of the Dharma, but also drives sentient beings further away from the right path. The root cause of conflict: ego over compassion. The Buddha taught that all conflicts arise from the ego. When practitioners place their self-identity above collective harmony, they sow the seeds of division. Every judgmental word and every action devoid of compassion becomes a brick in the wall of separation, causing those within the same faith to see each other not as companions, but as opponents. Harmony is the only way to preserve the Buddhist house. Practitioners do not need to be identical in their methods of practice, but they must share a common goal: to relieve the suffering of sentient beings. Diversity in approaches is not a danger, but an opportunity for the teachings to spread more powerfully. However, to achieve this, humility and listening are required. Ask yourself, are we building or destroying? When we criticize the practices of others, is it out of compassion or simply to assert our ego? When we take sides within the community, are we protecting the teachings or just satisfying our rivalry? When we see conflict, have we done anything to resolve it or simply sat back and allowed it to spread? Do not let division become our legacy. Internal conflict is not something unavoidable, but something that can be resolved through wisdom and compassion. Just as different rivers flow into one great sea, different paths of practice can still converge under the common roof of Buddhism. But to make this happen, practitioners must let go of their egos and place the shared goal above all differences. Wake up before it's too late. If internal conflict continues, practitioners will close the door to enlightenment, not only for themselves, but for all sentient beings. Remember that the strength of Buddhism does not lie in the number of practitioners, but in the harmony and diligence within the community. Do not let the light of the Dharma be dimmed by the darkness of discord. Together, let us preserve the flame of compassion and wisdom so that the torch of Buddhism will continue to illuminate the path for all beings.